Hello and welcome to Quassi's Bell Tower with your host, Quassi. And today we are going to make a dungeon statue wall for your dungeon accessories. So let's get to it. So the first thing we're going to do for this project is cut out our back wall. So our back wall's length has to be 4 inches. So I will cut this out. So now I set this to 3.5, and that will be the height of this project. So now we are going to do the thickness of the wall, and that is going to be 1/4 of an inch. So now our wall is done and out of the way. So now we're going to work on the columns, and we're going to go 1/2 inch again, and we're going to use the same exact piece of what was left over from us cutting out the wall. My foam that I use is 3/4 inch thick foam, so I am just going to cut this down to 1/2 inch again. So now what we're going to do is we are going to set this up to 1/2 inch. Now that we have our thickness for the columns, and we're going to run 2 strips through at 1/2 inch. So now I'm going to take my 4 inch by 3.5 leftover piece, which is less than 1/4 of an inch, but we are going to bring it down to 1/8 thickness is what we want. Now just to let you know, most of my pieces I've been cutting at the 4 inch length, even though they may or may not during this project get cut down a little shorter. It's better to have more than less. So now we're going to cut 4 3/8 inch wide, 4 inch long pieces. So now I'm going to take this 1/8 inch thick foam and run 2 pieces through at 1/8 width. So it is going to be 1/8 by 1/8, 4 inches in length. Now we will be cutting that piece and the other piece down to a smaller size, but for now this will do just fine. Now I'm going to take some of my scrap that I have here, which is 3/4 inch, and I'm going to run this down to 1/2 inch in thickness. And then I will run this down to 1/2 inch. So it's going to be 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch, and it's going to be square dowels basically. And you're only going to need one of these, and we'll cut it down to a smaller size. So what we're doing now is just going to make 4 squares. That's it, guys. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And these will be used also for the columns. So now this is where it's going to get a little difficult with the square pieces here that we just cut out. What I need to do is edge them in the front, and I didn't want to use my peroxide to do it, just because then I have to change the angle and do all that, and I hate going through all that. So what I'm going to do is just mark this at 1/4 inch, and then I will mark the other side 1/4 of an inch. And basically what I'm going to try to do is make these lines as straight as I can. I'm just going to eyeball them, guys. Yeah, and I know you probably can't see it because my hand's in the way, but I'll show you when I'm done. And then I will do that on this side of the square, and then I will do it on the other side of the square, a quarter or an eighth of an inch on both sides, because that is what we're gonna attempt to cut off using our X-Acto knife. And we'll have to do this to all 4 squares. And then attempt, you guys can see it, to cut those corners off as straight as possible. So now I'm going to attempt to cut this corner off without it being too much of a problem, trying to keep it as straight as I can and follow the lines. If I do make a mistake, which I already have, I can always come back and just try to skin it off a little bit more, or use some sandpaper and do the same thing. But remember, this is a dungeon wall. I doubt it's got to be really perfect. You know, how many people are going to see it in a dungeon? So then it should come out a little something like that. It'll be edged here and edged here. So I have to do that to the other 3 blocks. So after I do those, off camera of course, we will come back to the next part. So now I'm just going to take any piece of foam I have, scrap piece, and I'm going to run this down to a 1/8 thickness again. So what I'm going to do now is I am just going to run this down to a 1/2 inch wide and run this through. And then I just need 2 pieces at a 1/2 inch, so that's perfect. Perfect square there. And a square piece there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark my foam, my square pieces here that I have here, and I'm going to center it up and mark them at a 1/4 inch. I'm just going to put a little dot there so I know where that is. So then I will, after I mark that, I will just turn it to its side, center it back up, and mark it again at a 1/4 inch. And then I will do the same thing here and mark it at a 1/4 inch. So now I have my 3 marks, and all I'm going to do is take my X-Acto knife here, line these up on the edges, and just cut that right off. So then it should look pretty much like a home plate mount. So I will do that on the other one off camera, and then we will come back and start assembling all this. So now you should have your 4 square pieces that we edged off on the corners here, your 2 very thin 1/8 inch pieces, your 1/2 inch column pieces, and your 4 sides, which were at a 3/8 length, and then your 2 little pieces like this that look like baseball home plates. And now we can start doing a little bit of assembly. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and start assembling these 2 columns and kind of get them out of the way for now until we come back to them. So first thing we're going to do is take our main column, I'm calling this basically the main piece. This is the 1/4 inch thick, 1/2 inch wide, 3.5 tall piece, what we need. And it will fit on here just like that when we get that far, but we're not going to glue it to this at all. We're just going to put some tacky glue on this for now, and then put some tacks in it, because like I said, these are very small pieces and they are going to have to sit and dry and make sure they're strong enough for what we have to do later on in this video. So we'll go ahead and assemble this on, and as you see I have extra length, but what I'll have to do is just take my X-Acto knife later on and square that off. And you just want to make sure this is all lined up perfectly. Go ahead and throw a couple of your small little needles in there. Now I have 3 of these tacks in there. I think that should be enough to hold that together for now the way I want. If you want, you can put a 4th one in. I think I see a spot where it looks like it could probably use a little help. It looked like it was kind of coming up on there, like the glue wasn't holding it tight enough. So now I got 4 of them in there, no big deal. So now we'll go ahead and do this other wall. Same thing, the tacky glue. And then just go ahead, guys, and start putting your tacks in it. Okay, now that we have that assembled, we are gonna go ahead and put our 1/2-inch square pieces in that we did, and they will go on the top and the bottom of this. We go ahead and glue them in. Make sure they're nice and squared. You shouldn't have to tack these down as long as they stay where they're supposed to. And I forgot to mention is I probably should have put some detail into these before I started assembling them, but you can also do that after it's all done. You just have to be very careful with it. So next we're gonna take our little baseball mound here and glue that in place. And that is gonna go right underneath the top piece here. So then you're gonna glue your home plate piece in there just like that. And then we will cut this 1/8 by 1/8 piece down to 2 inches. Now this piece is going to be very difficult to place in there because we got to center it, and hopefully it will not turn to the left or the right. May have to put a pin in there to keep it from moving. I'm not sure. Like I said, this piece is very thin, very tiny. I don't even know if this is going to hold up, but we'll find out, because I'm kind of doing this project just like I did the last one on the fly. Okay. So this is where I wish I had a pair of small tweezers. But you want to get this centered in there the best you can. You might want to go a little more than 2 inches. I went exactly 2 inches, and for some reason, it does not seem to be lining up quite right. Like it's just a little too small. But I don't think it'll be too noticeable, so it should be okay. And that will be pretty much done. Let that dry. So when you're all done assembling it, it should look pretty much just like this. Yes, we do have to cut the top pieces off there. So while we're waiting for those column pieces to dry and getting back to any more of that stuff on here, we're gonna go ahead and cut out a couple circles. And the first circle is going to be at 2.5 inches, but I'm going to set this at 1.5 inches, or 1.25 inches. My mistake, guys. And I'm gonna push this foam through. And the nail is gonna come completely through because this is only an 1/8 inch thick piece of foam. And I think I got that centered pretty good. So let's see how this comes out. So now that I have this circle done, I have to move this in to where it will be set at 3/4 of an inch. And this is probably going to be a little difficult. I have this set at 1. I'm not sure how this is going to come out, guys. I hope I don't mess this up. But if I do, I'll just have to do it again and keep working on it. So I have this set at 1, and let's see what happens. I'll move this in just so slowly. Try to get it set at 3/4 and just run this through. Very slowly, since I have it set at 1 and I haven't changed the temperature. This circle here that we're doing is going to go on the bottom of the wall. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to use any MDF or anything else. to support this yet. I haven't quite figured it out. I probably am gonna have to, because I want to cut these into individual bricks. So that'll be that. Now is we are going to take this and just where the line was, where I cut it out where the foam is, I'm just gonna follow that line through, and then I will cut it down the center of those two. So if you saw my previous video before this one, with me torturing poor old John Cena here, now you know what he's going to be used for. He's going to become a statue. I will probably cover him in a cloth or some tissue paper or something, give him that gothic robe look on him. And then I have my circle pieces here. I have different sizes. They will go above him for the archway, and then I will do some bottoms down here, plate-wise, and then we will put a little edge here. It's going to be like a 1/8 by 1/8, 2 inches long edge here, and that's kind of going to sit those in place, or at least make it look like it's sitting on them. And then we'll cut these pieces off on the back end, and then I will use the Citadel skulls, which I got these for like $20, maybe $25. And we're gonna use these small skulls on here, sorry guys, the 82 count ones, and I'm gonna have to paint them before I assemble them into the little columns here. And I will have to paint this too. I will put little holes in here so I can push the skulls into the foam so it looks like it's part of it. So just like I was saying, I'm going to cut out my pieces. Actually, what I should do before I get too carried away, guys, is let's make sure that it is sitting at a 2-inch length. Okay, so I will run this through now and make my 2-inch long pieces here. And now I will run these down to the 1/8 mark. And we'll run it this way. Two of these. Should be the right thickness. So there we go. Those are done and out of the way. Those will get glued in there. Okay guys, now what I'm gonna do is I want to make a cap for these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going 1/4 inch wide on that 1/8 pieces we were using. And I'm just going to try to push this through again, as straight as I can. Such little pieces, it's hard to do this, but it can be done. It might not be perfectly square, but it'll work. And then I will glue these pieces all together, and I will show you what it looks like. If you see right there, I have that piece and that piece there. They're not glued in yet. Basically, these are gonna sit on there like kind of like caps this way, and then the arch will go up in here. Okay guys, I noticed on the bottom I was going to have a bit of a problem putting this in and not having anything behind it or anything holding it. So good thing I kept the circle. So basically I will put that circle back in there. And what I want to do is cut about 1/8 of an inch. And I'm just going to eyeball this. Hopefully this will be big enough. From here, straight across. I haven't cut it off completely, but basically I'm gonna do a line. Hopefully you guys can see that, but a line right there, so I can kind of get a measurement of what I want, how that to sit. And I will probably, that's just gonna fill in part of that, not all of that. I might have to add some brickwork into there just to hide that little space there. Okay, now you can see there's a little bit of gap here and a little gap there. I will have to cut out some small pieces to fill that in, but basically that'll sit like that. These will be a little bit different than each other, so they look more like their own little unique bricks. And then I'll have something in there, like I said, to fill that in, so that'll cover that up. And then I'll just glue that to the back of that. And then, like I said, we'll do the archway basically the same way. We're going to make those all individual bricks and then go from there. So as I was thinking about this, guys, I was going to do these all individual bricks. I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a line down with the X-Acto knife, then widen it with my pencil or a marker. Just kind of chip away at them. Of course, I'll do the little edges here too, so they do look like they're all separate bricks. And I will just take a pen in there and just widen them up. But what I think I'm going to do is make that one the biggest one and make each one of these just a little bit smaller than the next one. And then I will pop that onto that circle, glue it together, and then glue it into the wall back there, and then get some individual bricks to try to fill that in. Okay, now that I've got this piece here finally the way I want it, I'm going to go ahead and run a bead of glue along the bottom here and along here just a little bit, not much. My problem is I think this is going to be kind of weak, so I'm hoping with the Mod Podge and the sealant and everything else I put on it, it will strengthen it. I mean, yes, there's other ways I could have done this, but I didn't want to add any more thickness to it. So this is what I'm going with. And hopefully that glue will hold. Okay, that is now all dry. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the other arch on there, cut these tips off, and then we will attempt to do something with John Cena here and get those skulls installed. So with the arch here, I'm just going to do the same thing I did with the other arch, and that's basically just where I drew those lines, just make a cut in there, not very deep, but just enough to get it started. Don't want to go all the way through it. If I do, it's not really that big of a deal, but I really don't want to. And then I will cut some pieces off this to make it look like they're different size bricks. And I'll just take my pencil here, guys, and I'll just give it some depth to it. And then that's pretty much set. I think I would just set it in there like this. I'm gonna have to do maybe a little bit of trimming, but basically it'll sit there just like that. So now these are done. This one is going to dry overnight, and then I will paint it gray, and then I will put some highlights on it. I just painted this one gray. I'm gonna let it dry, then I'll put some highlights on it. So these guys are pretty much out of the way. I hope that it works out. It'll work for what I need it to. So now that my statue is all dried up, done, painted, dry brushed, all that, I am not going to make him a permanent fixture, because eventually I might make some other statues somewhere down the line and I can switch them out if I need to. But we're gonna go ahead and use the tinfoil ball technique and go put some texture on this, and then we will make the holes that will fit all these skulls on there, and then we will paint it up and I'll put the skulls in it. So I've gone ahead and done some texturing on this. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take a 1/8 drill bit, and I'm just going to use the back end of it. And all I'm going to do, and this is probably going to be kind of hard to see, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this and I just kind of push it into the foam. And if it goes in too far, it's okay, because you still got, what, a good 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch of whatever foam to use. And I'm just going to poke, if you can see that. So I'm just gonna poke some holes in there in just random places. Try to make it about where the skulls would meet. there probably won't be like 100% like, I mean, basically I'm just taking the skulls and kind of putting them in the wall. They're not really going to be stacked that well, but this should work. And I'm just kind of going, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch or so between each circle of foam that I'm putting in there, or hole I'm putting in there. These skulls are very small, so the spacing, you can pretty much go like that, and it should be good enough. I'll have to put the skulls in and test it out and see how it works out, but it should work out pretty good. There is going to be some spacing, but not too much. So now my last step is to take all these tiny skulls from Citadel Skulls and put them in all those holes there, glue them in there, and then I can seal this, and this will be complete. So there it is, guys, the completed dungeon statue wall. Now, I decided not to attach the statue to the wall at all in case I decide I want a different statue. So you're basically dealing with this, and that's it, guys. So if you guys like this video, please think about subscribing, click that bell notification, drop me a comment, and like always, ring that like button like a hunchback. Until next time, guys.